Welcome to the Humanized Books channel. Today we will continue series of mini-book summaries on frames, influence, and negotiation. The Today summary is not about money or buildings, is for listeners interested in psychology, negotiation, leadership, and the hidden forces behind high-stakes decisions. The number 3 book on the audiobook series is The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the only modern American president to return to the White House after losing an election, winning a second term through persistence, visibility, and belief. Long before politics, he built his identity in business. This audiobook explores the mindset behind that rise. Through the book he wrote himself, The Art of the Deal. Introduction. Trump did not write The Art of the Deal as a textbook. He wrote it as a window into how he thinks, how he works, and how he approaches power, risk, and opportunity. Part memoir, part business philosophy. The book blends real deals with broader lessons about confidence, leverage, and momentum. At its core, this is not a story about real estate alone. It is a story about ambition. Trump presents himself as someone who thrives on movement, pressure, and constant engagement. Deals are not just transactions, they are contests of vision, timing, and nerve. This mini-book extracts the most valuable ideas from those stories. Not to glorify, not to criticize, but to understand. Whether you admire Trump or question him, the principles he describes have influenced generations of entrepreneurs, negotiators, and public figures. This is a book about thinking big, using leverage, trusting instinct, and staying visible. It also reveals the risks of ego, exposure, and overextension. Listening carefully means learning not only what works, but what demands discipline. Chapter 1. The Art of the Deal. Trump's core philosophy. Donald Trump opens the book by making one thing clear. For him, deals are not abstract concepts. They are lived experiences. Every deal has a rhythm, a mood, and a moment when it must be pushed or released. His philosophy is simple but intense. He believes in thinking big, acting fast, and staying deeply involved in every detail. Trump rejects passive management. He wants to know the numbers, the people, the politics, and the pressure points personally. One of the strongest themes in this chapter is energy. Trump describes work as something he genuinely enjoys. Long hours do not drain him, they stimulate him. He thrives on phone calls, meetings, negotiations, and constant motion. For him, momentum creates opportunity. Stillness feels like decay. Another key idea is intuition. Trump places enormous value on instinct. While he pays attention to data, he does not allow analysis to paralyze action. He believes experience sharpens judgment, and judgment must sometimes override experts. This approach leads to bold moves, but also to high exposure. The chapter also introduces his view of risk. Trump does not avoid risk. Instead, he manages downside while keeping upside open. He prefers deals where he invests creativity and branding more than cash, reducing personal financial exposure while maintaining control. This mindset shapes many of his most famous projects. Publicity is another core element. Trump understands attention as currency. He believes visibility creates leverage. Being talked about keeps doors open, attracts partners, and shifts negotiation power. He does not fear controversy, he sees it as amplification. At the same time, this chapter reveals a contradiction. Trump wants control, but he also wants chaos. He enjoys unpredictability because it keeps opponents off balance. This can generate breakthroughs, but it also increases volatility. The lesson of this chapter is not imitation, but awareness. Trump's approach rewards confidence, speed, and presence. It also demands resilience, constant vigilance, and tolerance for pressure. The art of the deal, as he presents it, is not about contracts. It is about mindset. Deals begin in the head before they reach the table. Chapter 2. Trump's Deal. Making Principles. In this chapter, Donald J. Trump moves from storytelling into something more deliberate. He lays out what he sees as the unwritten rules behind successful deals. These are not academic theories. They are habits formed through repetition, confrontation, and risk. At the center of Trump's approach is one guiding idea. Leverage is everything. Leverage can come from many sources. Money is only one of them, and often not the most important. Trump emphasizes time, alternatives, publicity, and uncertainty as powerful forms of leverage. The side that can wait longer, walk away easier, or create more attention usually holds the advantage. Another core principle is thinking big. Trump argues that the effort required to think small is the same as the effort required to think big. Since both require work, he prefers aiming high. Big visions attract interest, talent, and energy. They also create momentum. Even if a deal does not reach its highest ambition, starting big expands what becomes possible. This mindset is closely tied to confidence. Trump believes confidence shapes reality. When you project belief in a project, others are more likely to believe in it too. Confidence becomes contagious. He does not see this as deception, but as leadership. In his view, people want to follow someone who seems certain, even when outcomes are not guaranteed. At the same time, Trump stresses the importance of protecting the downside. While he thinks big, he tries to limit personal exposure. He prefers deals where his name, vision, and negotiating skill create value, without requiring large cash investments up front. This allows him to pursue bold opportunities while containing risk. Another principle is knowing your market deeply. Trump insists on understanding not just numbers, but psychology. What do people want? What do they fear? What pressures are they under? He believes deals are made by understanding human motivation as much as financial structure. He also emphasizes timing. A good deal at the wrong time can fail. A mediocre deal at the right moment can succeed. Trump pays attention to economic cycles, political conditions, and public mood. He is willing to wait, but also willing to act decisively when timing aligns. Publicity plays a strategic role here. Trump treats media attention as leverage, not decoration. He understands that visibility can influence lenders, partners, and regulators. Being in the conversation keeps options open. Silence, in his view, is often a disadvantage. Another recurring theme is flexibility. Trump does not lock himself into rigid plans. He adapts as conditions change. He views negotiation as fluid, not fixed. This flexibility allows him to pivot when obstacles appear, rather than abandoning the deal entirely. He also talks about enjoying the process. For Trump, deal-making is not just about results. It is about engagement. He enjoys the tension, the back and forth, the uncertainty. This enjoyment gives him stamina. Where others burn out, he stays energized. The chapter also hints at a limitation. Confidence can border on overconfidence. Visibility can invite scrutiny. Flexibility can become inconsistency. Trump's principles create momentum, but they also amplify risk if not balanced with restraint. The deeper lesson of this chapter is not imitation, but understanding. Trump's rules work because they align with his personality, tolerance for pressure, and appetite for exposure. For others, the value lies in recognizing which principles translate and which require caution. Deals are not formulas. They are expressions of mindset. And this chapter makes that unmistakably clear. Chapter 3. Inside Trump's World, a Week in the Life. In this chapter, Trump, the art of the deal, becomes intensely practical. Instead of abstract rules, Donald Trump walks the reader through a typical work week, revealing how his deal-making philosophy functions in real time. The purpose is clear, to show that deals are not isolated events, but ongoing processes that overlap, collide, and evolve simultaneously. Trump's week is defined by volume and pace. Phone calls begin early and continue nonstop. Meetings stack on top of each other. Decisions are made quickly, often with incomplete information. He thrives in this environment, describing it not as stressful but energizing. Movement for him creates control. Staying active keeps leverage alive. One of the most important themes in this chapter is constant involvement. Trump does not delegate the core of decision-making. He stays directly involved in negotiations, design choices, financing discussions, and political approvals. Even when teams handle details, he inserts himself at key moments to redirect momentum or apply pressure. This hands-on approach allows him to spot opportunities others miss. It also allows him to intervene before problems become irreversible. The cost is intensity. The benefit is control. Another recurring theme is parallel negotiation. Trump rarely works on a single deal in isolation. Multiple projects move forward at once. This creates optionality. If one deal slows or collapses, attention shifts immediately to another. This reduces emotional attachment to any single outcome and strengthens leverage. He is never dependent on one win. The chapter also highlights Trump's relationship with conflict. Disputes with contractors, lenders, city officials, and partners are treated as normal. Trump does not shy away from confrontation. He believes conflict clarifies positions and exposes weaknesses. Avoiding tension, in his view, weakens bargaining power. At the same time, he knows when to soften. Trump frequently alternates between toughness and charm. Pressure is applied when needed, but relationships are not permanently burned if they remain useful. This oscillation keeps opponents uncertain and engaged. Media strategy appears again here. Trump actively engages journalists, shaping narratives around his projects. He understands that perception influences negotiation outcomes. Positive coverage attracts partners. Controversy keeps his name relevant. Silence, to him, is lost leverage. The chapter also reveals how Trump handles uncertainty. He often makes provisional decisions, adjusting later as new information emerges. He is comfortable revising plans publicly. Consistency is less important to him than momentum. This flexibility allows him to adapt quickly, but it also creates instability for those around him. One subtle but important lesson in this chapter is stamina. Trump's schedule is relentless. He sleeps little, works constantly, and expects others to keep pace. This filters collaborators. Only those who can endure pressure remain. Endurance becomes a form of leverage. The Week in the Life format makes one thing clear. Trump's deal-making style is not about isolated brilliance. It is about sustained intensity. His advantage comes from presence, persistence, and a willingness to live inside chaos longer than most people can tolerate. The lesson is not that everyone should work this way. The lesson is that strategy must match temperament. Trump's success comes from alignment between personality and method. For someone else, this pace might be destructive. For him, it is fuel. Deals, in Trump's world, are not moments. They are environments. Chapter 4. Building Leverage Without Owning Capital. This chapter shows how Donald Trump built power before he had money. At the beginning of his career, Trump did not control vast capital. What he did control was attention, persistence, and a willingness to enter situations others avoided. His early deals were not about buying properties outright, but about positioning himself between assets and opportunity. One of the central themes here is using other people's resources. Trump understood early that ownership was not always necessary to control a deal. What mattered was influence over outcomes. By negotiating options, long-term leases, and development rights, he could shape projects without risking large amounts of his own money. This approach reduced downside while preserving upside. A key example in this chapter is Trump's pursuit of distressed and overlooked properties. He was drawn to projects burdened by bureaucracy, debt, or public neglect. These situations scared away cautious investors, but Trump saw them as leverage opportunities. Problems created negotiation power. When a property was failing, everyone involved wanted resolution. Lenders wanted repayment, cities wanted development, communities wanted renewal. Trump positioned himself as the solution to multiple pains at once, even when his financial stake was limited. Another important theme is patience combined with pressure. Trump was willing to negotiate for months or years if necessary. He understood that time changes leverage. Political administrations shift. Market conditions evolve. Public sentiment moves. Waiting was not passive, it was strategic. At the same time, he applied pressure through visibility. Media attention kept deals alive and forced stakeholders to engage. Silence would have allowed negotiations to stall quietly. Public interest made delay costly. The chapter also highlights Trump's relationship with government. Many of his early deals required navigating zoning laws, tax abatements, and public approvals. Trump did not treat government as an obstacle to avoid, but as a system to engage. He learned how to speak the language of public benefit while pursuing private gain. This dual framing was essential. By presenting projects as beneficial to the city, job creation, and economic revival, he aligned his interests with political goals. This alignment created leverage where cash could not. Another recurring idea is reputation as currency. Even early on, Trump worked deliberately to build a reputation as someone who could get deals done. This reputation attracted partners willing to provide capital, expertise, or political access. Confidence signaled competence. even before results fully justified it. The chapter also reveals Trump's tolerance for risk. He was willing to stake his reputation on projects others doubted. Failure would have been visible. Success would be amplified. This asymmetric exposure made boldness rational in his framework. But this strategy also carried danger. High visibility means high accountability. Public failures damage leverage quickly. Trump's approach works best when momentum continues. It becomes fragile when setbacks compound. The deeper lesson of this chapter is strategic positioning. Trump did not wait to become powerful before acting powerful. He inserted himself into complex situations where value could be created through coordination, negotiation, and confidence. Capital followed positioning, not the other way around. For the listener, the takeaway is not imitation, but insight. Leverage is not only money, it is timing, alignment, attention, and endurance. Understanding this expands what is possible, especially early in a career. Chapter 5. The Commodore Hotel, Turning Decay into Leverage. The Commodore Hotel deal marks a turning point in Donald Trump's career. It is the moment where his ideas about leverage, publicity, government alignment, and risk converge into a visible success. More than any earlier project, this deal establishes Trump as a serious force in New York real estate. The Commodore Hotel, located next to Grand Central Terminal, was a symbol of decline. Once grand, it had become rundown, poorly managed, and nearly abandoned. Most developers avoided it. The problems were too many: financial losses, outdated infrastructure, and a city struggling with crime and fiscal crisis. Trump saw opportunity precisely because others saw failure. The first key insight in this chapter is seeing value where confidence has collapsed. Trump understood that the location itself was still powerful. Grand Central remained a transportation hub. What had failed was not geography, but imagination and coordination. The hotel needed capital, yes, but more importantly, it needed belief and political alignment. Another major theme is assembling leverage piece by piece. Trump did not own the hotel. He negotiated a long-term option rather than a purchase, minimizing upfront risk. He then secured a partnership with Hyatt, a respected hotel operator whose reputation added credibility to the project. This partnership reassured lenders and city officials. Credibility became leverage. The most critical element, however, was government support. Trump negotiated a substantial tax abatement from the city, arguing that redevelopment would revive the surrounding area, create jobs, and signal renewal at a time when New York desperately needed optimism. This was not charity. It was alignment. The city wanted revitalization. Trump wanted profitability. The deal worked because interests overlapped. Trump understood that successful deals often satisfy multiple agendas simultaneously. Another important lesson from this chapter is using publicity strategically. Trump ensured the project received attention. Media coverage reframed the Commodore not as a failed relic, but as a symbol of possibility. This visibility increased pressure on stakeholders to support the project. Momentum became contagious. The chapter also reveals Trump's comfort with high-stakes pressure. If the deal failed, it would fail publicly. Trump's name was attached. He accepted this risk because the upside was transformational. Success would establish his brand as someone capable of executing complex, politically sensitive projects. Execution, however, required relentless follow-through. Trump stayed involved in design, financing, negotiations, and branding. He pushed for bold architectural changes, including the reflective glass facade that dramatically altered the building's appearance. The goal was not subtle improvement. It was visual transformation. When the Grand Hyatt opened, it became an instant success. The hotel was profitable. The neighborhood improved. Trump's reputation expanded dramatically. What had begun as a distressed asset became a flagship project. But the deeper lesson of the Commodore deal is structural. Trump did not win because he had more money. He won because he coordinated interests, reduced downside, leveraged reputation, and moved decisively when timing aligned. He accepted uncertainty where others demanded guarantees. This chapter shows that breakthrough deals often come from complexity, not simplicity. When systems are broken, leverage appears. Chapter 6. Creating Value Through Image and Branding. By the time Donald Trump reaches the phase described in this chapter, he has learned a crucial lesson. Real estate is not only about land and structures. It is about perception. Image can multiply value faster than square footage ever could. This chapter marks Trump's shift from developer to brand. Trump begins to understand that his name itself can function as an asset. When attached to a project, it changes expectations. Lenders become more interested. Partners become more confident. Buyers assume quality, luxury, and ambition. The name creates momentum before construction even begins. One of the central ideas here is branding as leverage. Trump treats branding not as marketing decoration, but as a core business strategy. A strong image attracts better deals, stronger partners, and higher prices. It also creates differentiation in crowded markets. Luxury, in his view, is as much psychological as physical. This approach becomes clear in how Trump positions his projects. He does not aim for average. He aims for symbolic dominance. Tall buildings, prime locations, bold design choices, and unmistakable visibility are intentional. Each project is meant to signal success, confidence, and scale. Subtlety does not build brand power. Another key theme is control of narrative. Trump is deeply involved in how his projects are presented to the public. He understands that stories shape value. A building is not just a structure, it is a statement. Media coverage amplifies this statement, reinforcing the brand loop. Attention feeds credibility. Credibility feeds opportunity. This chapter also explores Trump's willingness to attach his name selectively. He does not brand everything. He chooses projects that reinforce his image of success and luxury. By being selective, the brand retains strength. Overuse would dilute impact. This restraint is strategic. Trump also begins licensing his name rather than owning everything outright. This allows expansion with limited capital risk. The brand generates income while others assume operational responsibility. It is a scalable model that turns reputation into recurring value. But this strategy depends on maintaining perception. The chapter makes clear that branding magnifies both success and failure. When things go well, the brand compounds advantage. When things go poorly, the brand absorbs the damage. Trump accepts this trade-off because he believes confidence can outpace criticism. Another important insight here is aspiration. Trump does not market practicality. He markets desire. His properties are positioned as symbols of arrival, status, and achievement. Buyers are not just purchasing space, they are purchasing identity. This is a powerful but risky approach. Aspiration fuels demand, but it also creates high expectations. Projects must deliver an experience that matches the image, or disappointment spreads quickly. The chapter also hints at a broader lesson. Modern business rewards visibility. Trump understands earlier than many that attention is an economic force. In a media-driven world, perception moves markets. Branding is not superficial. It is structural. The deeper takeaway is not about naming buildings after yourself. It is about recognizing that value is often psychological before it is financial. How something is perceived shapes how it performs. Managing perception is therefore part of managing reality. This chapter shows Trump evolving from deal maker to symbol maker. And symbols, once established, travel far beyond the original deal. Chapter 7. Expansion, Scale, and the Power of Reputation. By this stage of his career, Donald Trump has learned something essential. Once reputation is established, it travels ahead of you. Deals no longer begin with introductions. They begin with assumptions. People believe they already know what you represent. This chapter focuses on expansion. Trump starts looking beyond Manhattan, exploring opportunities in other cities and markets. What changes is not just geography, but scale. Projects become larger, more complex, and more visible. With that comes increased risk, but also increased leverage. One of the core themes here is reputation as advance currency. Trump finds that his name opens doors before negotiations even begin. Lenders are more receptive. Partners are more eager. Government officials are more willing to engage. The work required to gain attention decreases because attention now arrives automatically. This does not eliminate effort. It redirects it. Instead of fighting for visibility, Trump focuses on shaping expectations. His reputation creates a baseline assumption of ambition and luxury. Negotiations now start from a higher position. Another important theme is scaling the deal-making mindset. Trump applies the same principles he used in New York to larger, more distant projects. Think big, protect downside, use other people's capital, and maintain control over image. What changes is the complexity. More stakeholders, more regulations, more politics. Complexity becomes the new battlefield. Trump is comfortable operating in environments where interests collide. He sees confusion not as a threat, but as opportunity. Where many voices compete, someone willing to assert direction gains influence. This chapter also reveals Trump's approach to competition. He does not obsess over rivals. Instead, he focuses on differentiation. His goal is not to outmaneuver competitors quietly, but to outshine them publicly. Visibility, again, becomes leverage. Trump believes that if people are talking about his project, they are not talking about someone else's. Attention is finite. Capturing it weakens competitors indirectly. The chapter also highlights risk tolerance at scale. Larger deals magnify consequences. Mistakes become expensive. Delays become public. Trump accepts this reality and leans into it. He believes that fear of scale limits growth. Those who hesitate remain small. However, the chapter also hints at fragility. As projects grow, dependence on external forces increases. Markets shift. Political winds change. Financing conditions tighten. Reputation accelerates success, but it also accelerates exposure. Trump responds to this by maintaining flexibility. He avoids locking himself into rigid commitments when possible. He prefers options, renegotiation, and adaptability. Control for him is not about certainty. It is about maneuverability. Another subtle lesson here is ambition as identity. Trump does not expand because it is logical on paper. He expands because growth aligns with how he sees himself. His personal identity is tied to expansion, visibility, and scale. Standing still would feel like failure, even if financially safe. This identity-driven ambition fuels momentum, but it also narrows acceptable outcomes. The chapter shows that once reputation leads, expectations follow. Trump must now live up to the image he created. Every project reinforces or threatens that image. The deeper takeaway is this: scale changes everything. What works at one level becomes riskier at the next. Reputation multiplies opportunity, but it also magnifies consequence. Expansion is not just about bigger deals. It is about living with amplified stakes. Trump accepts that trade-off willingly. Chapter 8. Setbacks, criticism, and staying aggressive under pressure. This chapter reveals a side of Donald Trump that is less about expansion and more about endurance. As projects grow larger and more visible, resistance becomes inevitable. Deals stall, critics emerge, opponents push back. Trump's response to these pressures defines much of his public persona. One of the central themes here is aggression as defense. Trump does not retreat quietly when challenged. He responds forcefully. Criticism is met with counterattack. Opposition is reframed as weakness. He believes that showing vulnerability invites pressure, while projecting strength discourages it. This approach is deliberate. Trump views negotiation and public perception as continuous contests. Allowing critics to define the narrative would weaken leverage. By confronting resistance loudly and directly, he seeks to regain control of the story. Another key theme is embracing conflict rather than avoiding it. Trump does not expect consensus. He assumes disagreement is part of progress. When regulators, community groups, or competitors resist his projects, he treats conflict as a normal cost of ambition. Rather than soften his goals, he pushes harder. This mindset allows him to persist where others might abandon projects prematurely. The chapter also explores Trump's relationship with criticism and media backlash. Negative coverage does not surprise him. He expects it. In some cases, he even welcomes it. Trump believes that controversy keeps attention focused on him, which maintains relevance and leverage. Silence, in his view, is more dangerous than criticism. He operates on the belief that attention, even hostile attention, can be shaped. Another important idea here is confidence as a shield. Trump rarely publicly admits doubt. Even when projects face obstacles, he projects certainty. This confidence reassures partners and unsettles opponents. It also prevents momentum from collapsing internally. However, this approach has limits. Unyielding confidence can become rigidity. Dismissing criticism entirely risks missing valid warnings. Trump's strategy works best when instinct aligns with reality. When it does not, losses can be magnified. The chapter also touches on resilience. Trump accepts that setbacks are unavoidable. Deals fall apart, lawsuits arise, financing fails. His response is not introspection, but movement. He shifts attention to the next opportunity quickly. Emotional recovery happens through action, not reflection. This rapid forward motion prevents paralysis. Another lesson here is personal branding under attack. When Trump is criticized, he treats it as an attack on his identity, not just a project. His defense becomes personal. This reinforces his image as combative and unyielding, which appeals to some and repels others. The chapter shows that Trump's approach to setbacks is consistent with his overall philosophy. Never appear weak, never surrender the narrative, and never slow down long enough for doubt to take hold. The deeper takeaway is complex. This strategy creates momentum and discourages opposition. It also increases polarization and risk. It requires constant energy and attention. It leaves little room for quiet recalibration. Trump accepts this trade-off. For the listener, the value lies in understanding the cost of aggression. Strength projects power, but it demands endurance. Confidence attracts allies, but it also attracts resistance. This chapter shows that success at scale requires not only vision, but tolerance for friction. Pressure is not an exception. It is the environment. Chapter 9: Failure, Debt, and the Refusal to Collapse. This chapter confronts a reality that sits beneath Trump's confidence-driven philosophy. Not every deal works, and not every risk pays off. As Trump's projects grow larger and more complex, the margin for error shrinks. When things go wrong, the consequences are no longer abstract. They are financial, public, and personal. Trump addresses failure directly, but not in the way most people do. He does not describe it as something to be avoided at all costs. He describes it as something to be survived, managed, and outlasted. One of the central themes here is reframing failure. Trump refuses to internalize failure as identity. A bad deal does not make him a bad deal maker. A financial setback does not define his value. He separates outcome from self-worth, which allows him to continue operating when others would freeze. This psychological separation is critical. The chapter explores Trump's relationship with debt, which is often misunderstood. Trump does not see debt as inherently dangerous. He sees it as a tool. When used strategically, debt allows control of large assets with limited personal capital. When mismanaged, it becomes a threat. Trump accepts this duality. As markets shift and projects underperform, debt becomes pressure. Interest accumulates. Lenders tighten terms. Public scrutiny increases. Trump describes moments where leverage swings away from him and survival requires renegotiation rather than dominance. Another important theme is negotiating from weakness. Trump does not pretend that power is permanent. When leverage disappears, he adapts. He renegotiates terms, extends timelines, restructures obligations, and reframes narratives. He does not view this as defeat, but as recalibration. Pride gives way to pragmatism. The chapter shows that Trump's earlier insistence on flexibility now becomes essential. Deals are rewritten. Expectations are adjusted. The goal shifts from expansion to survival. Trump also emphasizes keeping momentum alive psychologically. Even when finances are strained, he maintains an outward appearance of confidence. He believes that panic accelerates collapse. Calm buys time. Time creates options. Options create recovery. This approach is controversial but consistent with his philosophy. Another lesson here is endurance under public pressure. Financial trouble invites media attention. Critics multiply. Narratives harden. Trump does not retreat from visibility. He stays present. He speaks confidently. He refuses to confirm weakness publicly. This behavior preserves negotiating position with lenders and partners. Perception remains a strategic asset even in crisis. The chapter also reveals the personal cost of this approach. Stress increases. Relationships strain. The margin for error disappears. Trump accepts these costs as part of operating at scale. He does not romanticize them, but he does not avoid them either. The deeper takeaway is not that failure is harmless. Failure is dangerous. Debt is real. Pressure is unforgiving. But Trump argues that collapse is often psychological before it is financial. Those who lose belief in recovery accelerate their own defeat. Trump's survival strategy rests on three pillars: separating identity from outcome, renegotiating rather than surrendering, maintaining confidence long enough for conditions to change. This chapter reveals that risk tolerance is not bravado. It is stamina. Failure does not end careers. Abandoning the game does. Chapter 10. Trusting instinct over expertise. In this chapter, Donald Trump addresses a question that runs through the entire book. Why does he rely so heavily on instinct, even when surrounded by experts, advisors, and detailed analysis? His answer is simple. Experience creates judgment, and judgment, once formed, deserves trust. Trump does not dismiss experts outright. He listens to them. He gathers information. He considers alternatives. But he does not allow expert opinion to override his own sense of timing, risk, and opportunity. When analysis conflicts with instinct, instinct usually wins. This approach defines his negotiation style. Trump believes that experts often operate defensively. Their incentives are aligned with caution, reputation, and avoiding blame. His incentives are aligned with momentum, visibility, and upside. Because the goals differ, the recommendations differ. He accepts that experts are often right in theory. He is more concerned with what works in practice. Another major theme in this chapter is decisiveness. Trump believes hesitation is more dangerous than being wrong. Delayed decisions allow opportunities to pass and opponents to reposition. Even imperfect action, in his view, creates information and movement. Stillness creates nothing. This does not mean recklessness. It means accepting uncertainty as unavoidable. Trump argues that no deal ever comes with complete information. Waiting for certainty is an excuse to avoid risk. Those who succeed learn to act with incomplete data and adjust quickly. This chapter also highlights pattern recognition. Trump trusts his instincts because they are built from repetition. After seeing hundreds of deals, negotiations, and failures, he believes he can sense when something feels right or wrong before logic catches up. This is not intuition as guesswork. It is intuition as compressed experience. He sees this as an advantage over those who rely solely on spreadsheets and reports. Another insight here is ownership of outcomes. Because Trump trusts his own judgment, he also accepts responsibility for consequences. When deals fail, he does not blame advisors publicly. He believes leadership means owning decisions, not hiding behind consensus. This ownership reinforces confidence. The chapter also shows how Trump uses instinct to read people. He pays attention to tone, hesitation, confidence, and posture. He trusts his sense of whether someone is strong, weak, honest, or uncertain. These impressions guide his negotiating tactics more than formal analysis. This people-reading skill becomes a substitute for exhaustive due diligence in some cases. It speeds decision-making, but it also increases risk when instincts misfire. Trump acknowledges this risk but accepts it. He also criticizes overcomplication. Trump believes many deals fail because they become too technical, too cautious, and too slow. Lawyers, consultants, and committees dilute momentum. By simplifying decisions and acting decisively, he believes he gains an edge. The deeper lesson of this chapter is alignment. Trump's reliance on instinct works because it matches his temperament. He is comfortable with pressure, exposure, and rapid adjustment. Someone else might need more structure. The danger lies in copying the method without sharing the mindset. Instinct is powerful only when supported by experience and accountability. This chapter reinforces Trump's belief that leadership is not about being correct all the time. It is about choosing a direction and committing fully. Hesitation signals doubt. Commitment signals belief. Trump chooses belief. Chapter 11: Competition, Winning, and the Psychology of Dominance. In this chapter, Donald Trump makes one of his most direct philosophical statements. He believes that business is competitive by nature, and pretending otherwise is naive. While cooperation, partnerships, and alliances are often necessary, Trump frames them as temporary alignments within a fundamentally competitive landscape. For him, winning matters. Trump does not hide this. He believes that the desire to win sharpens focus, clarifies priorities, and drives performance. Losing, in his view, is not just a bad outcome. It is a signal that leverage was mismanaged or timing was wrong. This mindset shapes how he approaches every negotiation. One of the central ideas in this chapter is strength as a psychological weapon. Trump believes that projecting strength changes the behavior of others before negotiations even begin. When opponents believe you are powerful, confident, and unwilling to concede easily, they adjust their expectations downward. This shift alone can determine outcomes. Perception precedes reality. Trump works deliberately to appear dominant. He speaks assertively, sets ambitious goals, and resists appearing eager. Even when leverage is unclear, he behaves as though it is firmly on his side. This posture discourages challenges and invites compromise. Another key theme is framing negotiations as zero-sum. Trump often assumes that what one side gains, the other loses. While this is not always economically accurate, it influences his tactics. He pushes for maximum advantage, believing that compromise should favor him disproportionately. This approach creates clear boundaries. Trump does not enter negotiations looking for mutual comfort, he looks for leverage. Cooperation is acceptable when it serves his position, but he does not rely on goodwill alone. Trust, for him, follows results, not promises. The chapter also discusses using competition to motivate allies. Trump pushes partners, employees, and contractors hard. He expects high performance and rewards those who deliver. Competition, in his view, filters out weakness. Those who cannot tolerate pressure self-select out. This creates an environment of intensity. The benefit is speed and ambition. The cost is strain and turnover. Trump accepts this trade-off. He believes comfort breeds complacency, while competition breeds excellence. Another important idea is never appearing desperate. Trump repeatedly emphasizes that desperation destroys leverage. Wanting a deal too badly weakens position. To counter this, he always keeps alternatives visible, even if they are imperfect. Optionality protects power. This principle echoes throughout the book. Trump also addresses criticism of his competitive style. Some view it as abrasive or excessive. Trump responds by arguing that outcomes matter more than approval. He does not aim to be liked universally. He aims to be effective. This does not mean he ignores relationships. He values loyalty and long-term partnerships when they reinforce strength, but he does not allow sentiment to override advantage. Emotional attachment is treated as a liability in negotiation. The deeper lesson of this chapter is psychological clarity. Trump's worldview simplifies decisions. There is a side pushing forward and a side pushing back. Hesitation weakens position. Assertion strengthens it. This clarity allows rapid action, but it also reduces nuance. This approach works best in environments where competition is explicit and stakes are high. It can struggle in contexts that require subtle consensus or shared vulnerability. Trump accepts this limitation. For the listener, the takeaway is not that everything must be a battle. It is that understanding competitive dynamics prevents self-deception. Ignoring power does not eliminate it. It only shifts advantage to those who acknowledge it. Winning, for Trump, is not about ego alone. It is about control. And control, in his philosophy, determines outcomes. Chapter 12. Publicity, Controversy, and Staying Visible. In this chapter, Donald Trump makes a claim that many business leaders avoid saying openly, "Attention is power." He does not treat publicity as a byproduct of success. He treats it as a strategic resource. Visibility creates leverage. Silence creates vulnerability. In Trump's view, being talked about keeps you relevant, and relevance keeps options open. Trump believes that most people underestimate how quickly attention fades. In competitive environments, disappearing from public conversation allows others to define the narrative. Staying visible ensures that you remain part of every discussion that matters. One of the central themes here is controlling the story. Trump does not wait for media coverage to happen. He actively shapes it. He calls reporters. He gives quotes. He offers bold statements that are difficult to ignore. By doing so, he influences how projects are framed before others can reinterpret them. This proactive approach reduces uncertainty. When people know your name and associate it with ambition, confidence, and action, they fill gaps in information with assumption rather than doubt. Trump understands this psychological shortcut and uses it deliberately. Another important idea in this chapter is controversy as amplification. Trump does not fear negative coverage. He believes that criticism keeps him in the spotlight just as effectively as praise. What matters is attention, not approval. In his calculation, being ignored is worse than being attacked. He operates on the belief that people remember boldness more than balance. This approach has risks. Controversy attracts opposition. It polarizes opinion. But Trump accepts this because polarization still maintains visibility. Supporters become more loyal. Critics become louder. Either way, attention remains focused. The chapter also discusses media as leverage in negotiation. Trump understands that public opinion can influence lenders, regulators, and partners. When a project is widely discussed, walking away becomes politically or reputationally costly for others involved. Publicity narrows their options. Visibility constrains alternatives. Another insight here is simplicity in messaging. Trump avoids complexity in public communication. He prefers clear, assertive statements. Nuance, in his view, weakens impact. Simplicity ensures repetition. Repetition ensures recognition. This approach reinforces his brand but sacrifices subtlety. Trump accepts this trade-off willingly. The chapter also reveals Trump's belief that confidence must be performed, not just felt. Public expression of certainty reinforces internal belief. Speaking boldly strengthens posture. Posture strengthens perception. Perception strengthens leverage. This feedback loop keeps momentum alive even when outcomes remain uncertain. Trump acknowledges that this style is not for everyone. It requires tolerance for scrutiny and criticism. It demands constant engagement. It leaves little room for privacy. But for Trump, the benefits outweigh the costs. The deeper lesson of this chapter is that modern success is inseparable from narrative. Deals are influenced by stories as much as numbers. Perception moves faster than reality, and those who shape perception gain time, leverage, and attention. Trump chooses to remain visible even when uncomfortable. In his philosophy, being seen is being powerful. Chapter 13. Discipline, Stamina, and Living at Full Intensity. In this chapter, Donald Trump addresses a question that naturally follows his aggressive, high-visibility lifestyle. How does he maintain stamina without burning out? His answer is not balance. It is intensity with structure. Trump rejects the idea that success requires a carefully protected work-life separation. Instead, he builds his life around work itself. He does not see work as something that drains him. He sees it as something that energizes him. This distinction shapes everything else. One of the central themes here is natural discipline. Trump does not describe himself as someone who forces productivity through rigid systems. His discipline comes from alignment. He works relentlessly because he enjoys the process. Negotiation, deal-making, and problem-solving stimulate him. When work feels like engagement rather than obligation, endurance increases. This is a key insight. Discipline is easier when effort matches temperament. Trump does not struggle to motivate himself because his ambitions excite him. This removes internal friction that exhausts others. Another important idea is simplicity of habits. Trump does not obsess over routines, optimization trends, or self-improvement systems. He keeps habits basic. He sleeps when tired. He eats simply. He avoids excess alcohol. He does not indulge in distractions that dull focus. This simplicity conserves energy. Trump also emphasizes directness. He avoids unnecessary meetings. He prefers phone calls to emails. He makes decisions quickly. By reducing delay and complexity, he preserves mental clarity. Prolonged indecision, in his view, drains more energy than action. The chapter highlights Trump's tolerance for pressure. Stress does not paralyze him. It sharpens him. When stakes rise, he becomes more alert, not less. This response is not universal. Many people shut down under pressure. Trump thrives on it. He attributes this partly to experience. After years of operating in high-risk environments, pressure feels familiar. Familiarity reduces fear. Fearlessness restores focus. This cycle reinforces stamina. Another theme here is emotional containment. Trump does not dwell on mistakes. He does not replay losses. He moves on quickly. Reflection is brief. Action resumes. This prevents emotional fatigue from accumulating. He believes that overthinking drains momentum. The chapter also touches on confidence as fuel. Believing in his own ability sustains Trump during difficult periods. Doubt would slow him down. Confidence accelerates recovery. Even when circumstances are challenging, belief keeps him moving forward. This confidence is not fragile. It is reinforced through repetition. Success builds belief. Belief enables risk. Risk creates opportunity. The chapter also hints at limitations. This lifestyle leaves little room for rest, introspection, or vulnerability. It requires constant engagement. It works best for those whose identity is deeply tied to ambition and action. Trump does not recommend this life universally. He presents it as personal truth. The deeper lesson of this chapter is alignment again. Sustained effort requires more than discipline. It requires congruence between values, temperament, and goals. When those align, stamina becomes natural rather than forced. Trump's intensity works because it fits him. For the listener, the insight is not to copy his schedule, but to recognize the power of working in harmony with your nature. Discipline is not punishment. It is direction. And direction preserves energy. Chapter 14, Success, Ambition, and the Refusal to Settle. In the final chapter, Donald Trump returns to first principles. After decades of deals, pressure, publicity, setbacks, and recovery, he offers his most direct reflection. Success is not accidental, and it is not evenly distributed because ambition is not evenly distributed. Trump believes that the single greatest dividing line between people is willingness to aim high and tolerate discomfort. Many people, in his view, choose safety not because it is rational, but because it feels familiar. They lower expectations to reduce risk. Trump does the opposite. He raises expectations to force growth. One of the central themes of this chapter is refusal to settle. Trump argues that settling early becomes a habit. Once people accept less than what they want, they adjust their identity downward. Over time, ambition fades and comfort replaces drive. Trump sees this as a quiet form of failure. For him, dissatisfaction is productive. He is rarely content for long. Success creates momentum, not rest. Each completed project becomes a platform for the next challenge. This forward motion defines his career more than any single achievement. Another key idea here is belief as a self-fulfilling force. Trump insists that people often fail before they begin because they do not believe they deserve success. Self-doubt shapes behavior subtly. It weakens posture, limits negotiation, and narrows imagination. Confidence, by contrast, expands possibility. Trump does not wait for permission to believe in himself. This chapter also reinforces his emphasis on visibility and presence. Trump believes that success favors those who show up fully. Half commitment produces half results. Visibility invites risk, but it also invites opportunity. Staying in the background protects comfort, not ambition. The chapter touches again on risk tolerance. Trump acknowledges that his approach is not safe. It invites scrutiny, criticism, and volatility. But he believes that meaningful success requires exposure. Shielding oneself from risk also shields one from reward. He accepts the emotional cost of this trade-off. Another theme here is ownership of outcome. Trump believes that people must take responsibility for both wins and losses. Blaming circumstances, partners, or systems erodes agency. Ownership preserves power. Even when conditions are unfavorable, believing you have influence keeps options alive. The chapter also reflects Trump's worldview on competition and reality. He rejects the idea that success is evenly accessible. He believes the world rewards assertiveness, confidence, and persistence. Waiting to be chosen is less effective than choosing yourself. This belief shapes everything he does. The final pages of the book do not soften Trump's philosophy. He does not advocate balance, restraint, or humility as guiding virtues. He advocates intensity, belief, and relentless pursuit of opportunity. Whether one agrees or disagrees, the worldview is consistent. The deeper lesson of this chapter is clarity. Trump's success comes not from hidden genius, but from alignment between ambition, temperament, and method. He wants visibility, pressure, and scale, and he builds his life accordingly. This chapter closes the book where it began, with mindset. Deals change, markets shift, public opinion moves, but ambition, once chosen, defines direction, and Trump never chooses small. Conclusion. Trump. The Art of the Deal is not simply a book about real estate or money. It is a book about posture, belief, and how one person chooses to move through a competitive world. Across its chapters, a consistent worldview emerges. Success belongs to those who think boldly, act decisively, and tolerate pressure longer than others. Trump's philosophy emphasizes confidence, visibility, leverage, and instinct. He trusts momentum over hesitation, exposure over caution, and ambition over comfort. Deals, in his view, are shaped as much by psychology and perception as by numbers and contracts. Attention becomes currency, reputation becomes leverage, belief becomes fuel. At the same time, the book quietly reveals the costs of this approach. Intensity demands stamina. Visibility invites criticism. Confidence magnifies both success and failure. This way of operating requires resilience, adaptability, and a willingness to live with constant uncertainty. The value of this book lies not in imitation, but in understanding. It shows how mindset shapes outcomes, how risk and reward are inseparable, and how personal temperament determines which strategies can be sustained. Whether admired or questioned, Trump's method is consistent. He chooses scale, confrontation, and ambition, and accepts the consequences that follow. In the end, The Art of the Deal is a study in alignment. When belief, personality, and strategy move in the same direction, momentum becomes possible. And momentum, once created, carries everything else with it. If this audiobook challenged how you think, support the work by subscribing, liking, and sharing your thoughts below. Comments shape future content. Stay curious, stay aware, and return for deeper explorations. All the best, and take care of yourselves.